Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Coursera. In a moment, I'm going to pass over to our chair, Andy Poole, to begin today's session. Before I do, I just want to remind you all that today's session is being recorded and a copy of the recording is going to be sent to you all a week from today. We'd like to encourage you all to submit your questions using either the Q&A or the chat function, and our panel are going to aim to answer as many as possible at the end of the session. For any questions that are unanswered, Coursera has kindly agreed to reach out to you following the webinar with the answers. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you now, Andy, to get us started.
Thank you very much indeed. So really happy to be here today and to be joined by leaders from across the business school sector in the EMEA region. So my name is Andy Poole. I work as Partnerships Director at Coursera for Campus, working with universities to address various challenges. Within Coursera for Campus, I also head up our business school side, our relationships with various business schools. And the reason for that is because prior to joining Coursera, I spent about 6.5 years at Saïd Business School, where I looked after postgraduate programs from a recruitment, business development and admission side. So that's me. And now, more importantly, over to our panelists. So starting with Dr. Leila Tricky. So if you could please introduce yourself, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So happy to be part of this panel. My name is Leila Tricky. I'm Dean of the Mediterranean School of Business, which is part of a wider university, South Mediterranean University. It's the first English-speaking university in Francophone Tunisia, and I'm very happy to join the conversation today.
Thank you. And so moving on to Professor Tammy Gorfi, please.
Yes, very glad to be part of this panel also, and thank you for the invitation. I'm the Dean of Eskas École de Management in Casablanca, Morocco. And maybe add that Eskas is a very international business school in the area here, and that's why global perspective and openness is something important to us. I'm going to share some ideas about that.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And last but not least, handing over to Corinne Peffer, please.
Thank you, Andy. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel as well. Very pleased to be here. I'm Corinne Peffer. I'm the Director of Studies for the Global BBA program at Saïd Business School, which is actually delivered on 3 different locations in Paris, in Singapore, and in Morocco, in Rabat. So not too far from you, Tammy. And yeah, basically that's it. And I'm very happy to actually share, our experiences about digitization of the program and internationalization. That's really fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, so as was said at the beginning, if you have any questions as we're talking through, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'll do our best to answer them. But starting with our sort of discussion, I think if we go to Dr. Tricky first, please. So thinking around this context that we're in right now, where more and more talk is around digitization, automation, alongside that, there's clearly a need for more developed soft skills and emotional intelligence. So I'm interested to hear, first of all, how you at MSB are helping students to develop these human skills, and how perhaps is online learning a part of that solution?
Thank you, Andy. Indeed, those are, for me, also reassuring skills, because as you said, with automation and too much digitalization, are us as human beings still part of it, right? So personally, I'm very happy to know that those are actually becoming the critical skills. Like studies show that what differentiates CEOs among each other are no longer the technical skills, but more and more their ability to lead, to communicate, to negotiate. And as I said, I'm very much reassured of those human skills that we talk more and more about. For sure, like at least for myself, when I used to study at university, those were skills that you wouldn't find within curriculums, right? I did more math studies, my undergrad and my doctoral program. But even in more, business school studies, you wouldn't find these skills that are actually taught. And I think that more and more, at least for the past decades, either it be called soft skills, human skills, emotional intelligence, we find them more and more. So at our school, for sure, they have a very specific place. And we also talk about them as distinctive feature, and we think we do it well. And we hope to continue to focus on them. And so we have either specific courses, so we have developed specific courses in all our degree awarding programs, which are, leadership courses, negotiation courses, team building, public speaking. So those are, credit awarding specific courses within all degree awarding programs. But we also think of it as a transversal approach. So it's also a pedagogical approach, or transversal across the way we teach. And for us, it's very important that the pedagogical approach to learning, the use of case studies, the problem-based learning approach, the project-based learning approach, those are things that we try to find across all courses, and that we think help us develop these skills that become more and more critical. And also with the pandemic, we have been more, brought into the digital learning approach. And I think among the courses that have been more hit by the digital learning, it's more difficult, right? If you want to bring in more emotional intelligence or human skills within the blended approach, the digital approach, those were skills that have been more difficult to find a way to be able, to develop them within your students. But the good thing with now going back to more face-to-face learning, we're still keeping it blended. And for us here, either it be coaching, negotiation, etc., you could still keep a part that is digital, and you benefit from the in-class hours for more the play world aspect within these courses, the fact of living an experience, etc. So we still keep the theoretical or learning, from leaders, etc. Those parts have been kept online on platforms like Coursera, or asynchronous part developed by our own faculty, which is more, the theoretical aspect of it, or sharing a specific leader's approach to it. But the in-class is the experiential role-playing part that we have kept within our programs.
If I can jump in that,
yes, of course,
Andy. Well, thank you very much, Leila. Completely agree with you. And as I think, I don't know very much about your institution, but it seems the spirit in terms of enhancing soft skills exists very much similar as what we do at ASEC. And from the experience from the pandemic is actually very interesting. What we have somehow we could not just scrap all those skills from the curriculum because we had to switch online, right? So we had to maintain that knowledge acquisition and skills acquisition. And it's been a completely different experience for the students and the professors as well, which has had to adapt. And one of the feedback we got is that basically they very much prefer pure format. So either fully online or fully on campus. But the mix of them in the same course is kind of difficult to handle. And this is something that we're actually keeping now. So some of the courses, I'm thinking, for example, of the negotiation that you mentioned, we keep some sections on campus, like you do. And we also keep some sections fully online to cater to, specific situations of some of our students or professors. And that works pretty nicely. And ideally, I think we should have both, really, because it's actually a different experience. And our students need to learn to be able to connect and to relate to their future colleagues or partners through the online world, because it's going to be part of their working life, their career, no matter what. So in that sense, it's been a very, the past few months, though difficult as they may have been very insightful in that respect for the soft skills.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I mean, it's interesting that in my discussions with various universities around the world, there's a great, I think, reassurance that these soft skills, like Leila mentioned at the beginning, that they are becoming more and more important, because there's this, I think, fear that this digital world means all machines and we need to do all very technical. So it's interesting to see your reaction is very much the same as what I've been seeing myself. So moving to Professor Gorfi, please. I think we talked a little bit about the pandemic there. So clearly it's been extremely challenging and continues to be challenging for all of us, and particularly our students. So I'm interested to understand how ESCA is working on developing an agile curriculum that is focused on employability for this particular changing environment.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to say that I totally agree with Leila and Corinne about the insights they shared with us. Maybe one thing I would want to add and answer your question about the agile curriculum to support employability of the students is just to say that the pandemic, and particularly the disruption brought by the lockdown, was something that helped all the schools worldwide to rethink their mission and the tools and the pedagogy, and to accelerate a lot of projects that we had in our boxes since a number of years. We had some kind of ambitions to bring new tools, new pedagogy, to interact in different with the students, to work differently with the faculty, and sometimes I totally agree that in this period, I would prefer to be in-person conference and have a tea or coffee or have lunch with you, Andy, and the colleagues after this session. But we earned a lot of things that are positive. And the first thing I would want to say that we had to rethink the way that we have to be agile ourselves to work better with our students to bring something new. And this is something very transformative. So for us, we took this situation as a real opportunity to accelerate a lot of things and to use all the tools that we can use to bring something new to the students and strengthen the curricula and at the same time bring new skills. So first of all is that we, since 10 years, we try to do a lot with the e-learning. And with that, we accelerated a lot and everybody accepted the e-learning. And since June 2020, we decided that our present and our future at Eskas will be and is and will be blended learning. So this is a strategic decision that needs and make us change a lot of things in the way we work, the way we think our mission, the way we deliver and align it to our mission. We deliver the courses, the programs, and so on and so on. So I would want to share with you some examples of levers that we use it. For example, we decided to go very quickly to use virtual courses taught in English with our international partners to say we have to stay at home. Our students cannot move at this period, but let's go and use something else. So we international courses, sharing faculty. We had a long time some resistance and obstacles to have some budget for faculty exchange. Now it's really easy. We don't have to pay flights and hotels. We put our means in the added value for our students. And this is something very important to say. We went also to have more and more online business games with students from different parts of the world, using a number of our partners worldwide to say, okay, let's make our students have an international experience and work together and develop their international perspective and so on and so on. We invited more and more faculty, international faculty, to give and bring their knowledge and practice and experience about some topics that we needed to know more and to make our students understand more. For example, social networks and e-commerce. What about the new marketplace in other places in the world, in other countries, other contexts, to learn more? What about the disruptions of the supply chain globally, and maybe in some areas in the world? And this kind of seminars and webinars to our students in the specialized masters and things like this helped a lot to understand what happens elsewhere versus what we see and what we live and what about our experience. We decided to diversify the school's program by adding 2 new programs. For example, one which is a specialized master in digital transformation. So we decided to dive in it and say, okay, digital transformation is something that we have to learn together, but we have to bring around the table corporates, faculty members, and let's work together to find how we can prepare new profiles that can support the digital transformation in the companies. We launched this year a new bachelor, which is a bachelor in digital business, that helps students. It's a 4-year program that helps students acquire 2 kinds of competencies. One in the digital area, because it's a matter of generation and they need that, but at the same time to know better and more about business and management, so they can combine both management and business projects and at the same time being in the digital world. We introduced a lot of innovation, the structure of and content of existing programs, just like more and more tools and pedagogical innovation, just like station rotation. We trained our faculty, and more faculty now are using flipped classroom that only few faculty were using a couple of years ago. So this kind of tools that we wanted to use a number of years ago now are more common to the core faculty in the school. We provide more electives in non-business courses, and this is very interesting to hear about this soft skills, but some other skills that are not really soft, just like, but that are very important to students now in this period, just like big data, sharing economy, artificial intelligence, personal branding as a soft skill. This helps students, depending on the level of their studies, to go into that and to get that courses. I would want to conclude by saying that we decided at the same time not to have all these initiatives spread in the school anyway. And when we started, we had a lot of initiatives held by faculty, by staff members, and so on and so on. And then we used to create what we call now the Eskas Learning Lab. The Eskas Learning Lab is just, in a way, an opportunity to bring all our ideas and our projects and to learn, to test, to learn again, and to have feedback and to strengthen our innovations. And in the Eskas Learning Lab, we also bring our students as important stakeholder to finalize the pedagogical innovation before settling it definitely in our courses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there's lots of information there. So I think what comes across is how positive you are around the various challenges that you've been faced with and how you've seen it as an opportunity. So I guess, like, really holding with that thought, I'm interested to hear from our other panelists around that, around how much obviously the pandemic has been horrendous and terrible for society in general, but how much you've kind of seen it as a liberating force to overcome maybe some of what we often talk about as the barrier being the comfort of the status quo. So how much you've been able to kind of use that kind of momentum. So I mean, either Leila, Corinne, whoever would like to comment on that, really.
I completely agree that it's a wonderful opportunity to transform constraints into opportunities. I mean, it's just so overwhelming as such. I mean, you know, it's just been impacting all our activities, basically. What we've seen, for example, is that we're now much more able to accommodate students in very specific situations in terms of curriculum and personal health condition or whatever. So this is more my director of studies cap talking here. The fact that we're now able to provide courses both on campus and online, you know, with the dual teaching format, this is actually quite a relief, and for everybody, it really brings kind of smoothen things for a lot of students, and they definitely need it. So it's somehow a way to address those difficult personal situations that we've had for our students since the pandemic, and even before, I mean, regardless of the health situation. So that's more, you know, from the individual side. And then in terms of curriculum, it kind of, I mean, Tammy has said it very well, it kind of boosted everything. We had a lot of things in our minds, and you know, projects and talking with faculty, and then suddenly things accelerate because everybody has to be there, because it's relevant, but also because we have no choice. Really, we have to provide some online content in hybrid formats, and that, I don't know, maybe Leila, you have more specific examples to share, because I mean, for me, it's just everything basically. So I'll try to figure out something a bit more precise to share later. But
oh, definitely. I think we all agree on the, you know, global impact, let's say. When I say global impact in terms of even the business school, and it's also, you know, at some point questions your own business model. It opens a new competitive environment. So now for us, we usually have seen our direct competitors, more schools in Tunisia or the region, but now competitors could be in Europe, competitors could be anywhere else. And how do you really you know, it pushes you more to get what is really your distinctiveness. We see it positively because it pushes us to go more clearly in the distinctive part of knowing maybe more. I'm seeing with Tammy you know, our regional knowledge, our regional network of the business community. It pushes us more to go for specific case studies that are relevant to leaders of our region and what is truly our you know, competitive advantage. So we see it as positive in that sense as well, because it drills our thoughts into our specific competitiveness. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So moving to Corinne, please. Thinking about these kind of emerging skills that we've talked about, I'm interested to hear how ESSEC addresses mixed abilities when you're selecting your students to ensure all students have the foundations to succeed. Because of course, we're talking about more digital skills, a kind of broader skill profile. So that also brings complexities around ensuring that all students can cope with the material that they're being faced with. So I'm interested to hear how ESSEC is addressing that.
Yeah, it's a tricky question actually, because so I'm working for an undergraduate program. So we are recruiting students that are really, you know, right out of high school. So they're really young, like 17, 18 years old. We recruit internationally, so from very different educational systems. And it's very hard to compare in a way. Of course, we have some standards. We know very well the French system because we're a French-based school. We know very well the IB, the A levels, etc. But when you come to, I don't know, the Cambodian educational system, Peruvian educational system, it's hard to really assess. So it's a very interesting point that you're raising. And in terms of philosophy, I would say, basically what we provide a generalist program. So somehow we kind of start afresh. We make sure that when students start, they all get the same general education and knowledge and foundations. So somehow we're not looking at really specific skills that they need to match. Otherwise they wouldn't be eligible. We have a very open view on the profiles that we look at. What we definitely look for is, very good students. Basically, we really look at the academic record. That goes without saying. But then the other part that we're very careful about is more in terms of personality, and I would say social skills and soft skills already. We don't expect them to be, fully rounded individuals at such a young age. But this is something we definitely assess with the interviews, because that's where we need to check the fit. Then we know we have some like basics. We make sure that they're not too completely out of our scheme in terms of math or stuff like that. But we don't really require specific skills that need to be matched. And our students do not all have the same profile, basically. And we make sure that that's really the way we look at it. So it's more for the program to be able to bring them towards where we want them to be at the end of those 4 years. And this is, we have 4 years to do that. So it's pretty long, as opposed to some master's program where you probably have more, a bit more stringent and specific in the requirements that you're looking at. But that's the beauty of a bachelor program. You take them young and we have time to make them progress on that path.
Thank you very much. So I'm interested to hear Professor Gorfi, maybe like on that point in terms of student backgrounds and ensuring sort of leveling them up in the context of your MBA or your postgraduate students. Do you have any kind of tips or any ways in which you approach that at Eskas?
Andy, I didn't hear you very well. You were saying.
So let me repeat that. It's okay. So in the context of your postgraduate programs, so in terms of ensuring that they're all equipped at a kind of level standard, so that they're able to cope with the challenges of the particular programs. Do you have any kind of tips that ways that you approach that in terms of, for example, on an MBA, often you find that students have very different quantitative skills, and sometimes that can be a challenge. Are there any ways in which you address that at Eskas?
Yes, thank you for the question. Maybe start by mentioning that for the postgraduate program, we have an international MBA, which is a part-time MBA for people that already work and have already an experience in a management position in the organization. But we have also in the postgrad programs, specialized masters in which we have larger cohorts. And what we worked on these last 2 years is just to match the competences and the key competences we decided that we wanted to have for the whole programs. Because we consider, and I come back to what Leila was mentioning, in our case at Eskas, the profile of the students is that we want her or him to have an advanced competency, a real expertise in her or his domain, but at the same time, we want them to have a number of soft skills that will help them achieve good results in their activities, just like interdisciplinary thinking, personal initiative and act as an entrepreneur, be real problem solvers. And my God, we know all that we need problem solvers in a lot of companies, in every sector and in every part of the world, and in this period, to be to have a global perspective and open to the world, to be socially responsible. And particularly when I say socially responsible, it doesn't mean the same thing when you are in Frankfurt or London or Casablanca. When you are in a developing country, the notion of being responsible is that we have to think that we have a large part of the society that we need to embark and to be part of the growth and to be part of the wealth that is created, and to act as an engine, not only for yourself, but for society at large. And this is another issue about the impact and we want to have in the school. So we just worked to say, what about the skills we work on to equip our postgrad students and our undergrad students now, and what is demanded in the near future? And so we found that there are some skills that are really needed and maybe more highlighted in this period, just like problem solving, complexity management, social responsibility, because in a period in which we have the pandemic, we see that the society can be more fragmented and people need more solidarity. And the other skills, we decided to keep them, but to work more on these particular skills to help our postgraduate students to be able to discuss better with companies and to add that to their expertise. I mean, if they work in the financial area, they have an expertise in corporate finance, but they need all the other soft skills to put light on their corporate finance skills, for example. So this is the idea.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Dr. Tricky, so based on, so we've talked a lot here around sort of the changing environment. So I'm interested to hear what you feel are large growth areas in both undergraduate, postgraduate and executive education areas. So Professor Gorfi mentioned that they've launched specialized masters in digital transformation, for example, and a bachelor's in digital business. So are MSB looking at new programs? Have you launched them? Where do you see these opportunities for business schools?
Yes, definitely. I think the greatest impact is more those technological trends. And we see that there is a more and more need for, even if you're studying business, to have more knowledge in big data, on the impacts of artificial intelligence, on blockchain, etc. So this has really pushed also executive education, because those are really things that are impacting also the corporate sector, and what leaders have learned maybe 15 years ago is no longer what they need to know today to, as Tammy said, to solve those complex issues, etc. So we really see a big growth within executive education and doing those micro-credential, upskilling of corporate workforce. And this would be more in the new trends that we have been talking about, right? More into big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, etc. And for us, like from the start, so we start with a business school, but let's say we were lucky that the founding members early on thought of an engineering school. And it's really now that we see this great synergy that could be created alongside with an engineering school. And we're developing now a lot of programs like the engineer manager. So a lot of programs in common with the engineering school, because even the engineers need the more business, side. And we're really happy of the fact that we have an engineering school alongside our business school. And in everything, like what was said, it's also the multidisciplinary approach, right? The business environment is more and more complex. For us, liberal arts education is very important as well, to develop those critical skills that are very much needed. So we're really looking at it, for sure, business and engineering, like double competencies, double hats, but without forgetting all the liberal arts education that bring more this openness, holistic approach to learning. And for us, it's a very important component as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And so, like, posing that question really to Corinne, I'm interested in the context of your global BBA program. So how do you see these changes affecting the program? Do you see this as causing the need for kind of maybe more fragmented versions of the program, or are you incorporating the kind of the changes into the core of the program? How does it kind of work from Essex perspective?
Probably both, I would say, both fragmenting and incorporating. I relate very much with Leila Tricky has just mentioned. We're probably not looking at new programs, because we have already a lot, but more like integrating all these new trends into our current programs and reshuffling, reshifting, etc. For the BBA program, there are really three main major areas that we want to already integrate into the program. First is the IT part, artificial intelligence, coding, etc. And reflecting on your very first question, Andy, where you were saying, automation is around, all over the place. Are we still humans anymore, etc. And what do we do with soft skills? For us, it was actually the other approach. We've had soft skills in the program for a very long time, and it's part of the core curriculum. And we felt that we needed to add more IT, coding, AI into the program. Not so much that we want our bachelor students to become engineers, because that's not the path that they've chosen. They've chosen business. But we want them to understand people who are going to be engineers and who they will be working with. We want them to understand their language so that they can, they are able to communicate. And also we have a lot of students that have this entrepreneurship mindset, and having a little bit of coding skills to start with, or, understanding all those platforms, how they work, definitely helpful. So that's the first part. And this is something that we've been developing for the past 2 years, and the online format has helped a lot, because in that kind of subjects, the asynchronous format we believe is very useful, because each students can learn at their own path. We still have some office hours with professors, etc. But honestly, duplicating an Excel or programming class or Python class or whatever throughout the curriculum there's only so many people you can put in a classroom to teach those subjects. So it's very complicated in terms of logistics. And switching to online classes, asynchronous, is actually a godsend somehow. And this has been accelerated for the past 2-3 years. So that's the first part. The second part is more towards, liberal arts, as Leila was mentioning, humanities, science also, scientific knowledge and culture is very important, especially at ESSEC, where we're a standalone business school. We're not affiliated or part of a university. So we just teach business, so very, very broadly speaking, but still we don't have science classes, political science classes, or arts or whatever. And we've decided a long time ago to really reinforce that part of the program. And this has been what we've been doing with Coursera, actually, to use the MOOCs from other partners, other universities, so that our students can actually access that knowledge differently, though it's not part of our core competence at ESSEC, but they still can get that general education. And this is, I think, absolutely fundamental for our students to become really, future leaders that have this understanding of what's happening around them, their environment, and not just looking at the operations of business. They really need to be attuned to what's at stake with the world. And that leads me to my third point, which is the very recent change in strategy that we've had at ESSEC, very proactive, in terms of employability and skills, we also believe that it's absolutely key, just like Tammy mentioned before, that our students are trained and aware of the macro challenges around, social responsibility, climate change, artificial intelligence, obviously, as well. And this is really part of, it's a requirement from the school that we need to integrate this into our programs. And for this, we are using the online format as well. So we are gonna, because we're all in the same situation, with accreditations, etc. We want to make sure that we have those ratios of permanent professors that are respected. And the way we can address that, because we have, 6,000 full-time students, there's no way we can have one permanent faculty teaching all those people in a classroom in a very typical way. So we're using the SPOC format, actually, to deliver those new core courses in the programs, and making sure that all our students are trained, with some adjustments depending on the level. Obviously, you don't teach specialized masters like you teach BBA, but it's still, there's still some very basic foundations that we can spread all across our programs. And this is really the way we've been addressing those. The challenges in themselves are not recent, but it's recently fully part of our strategy at ASEC to do so.
Fantastic, thank you. Really interesting. So, so I think since I've been working at Coursera, one of the things that's maybe surprised me is that I guess I assumed that standalone business schools would find it particularly challenging in this context when there's more and more need for interdisciplinary skills, etc. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think it's been made clear to me in my discussions that actually schools that are part of broader universities have very much the same challenges in terms of those sort of digital skills, and the professors who teach areas like data science and AI, etc., are in such high demand that currently they can't be made available to all students. So there's this need to kind of find other ways of bringing in that expertise. So so that's interesting from your comments there. I wanted to ask Professor Gorfi, actually. So you mentioned around your new specialized masters in digital transformation and bachelors in digital business. Are they is that kind of the end of your new programming, do you think, to meet these changes, these new needs, or do you see that as the beginning? Are you kind of also adapting your existing programs? Do you have other programs that are coming?
It never ends. The world is perpetually changing, and if we do not adapt, we have to live in a way. So I don't know, but what the work I'm doing now with the team is to change something really strategic in the school. Because we can talk about the programs, and to answer your question, I think for these 2 coming years, we have to work with these programs, make them relevant to the companies, give the students the proof that they can differentiate on the workplace, and they can bring added value to their companies and things like this. But at the same time, by having such programs, it means that we settle something deep into the school that helps spread the change and put the culture of digitalization on other programs at the same time. But what I want to say more strategically is that for me, the issue for a business school in this period is not to work only on programs that can fit the needs of the market for the coming months or the coming years, but it's more to work on the new positioning of the school, and to maybe answer the following question. We're talking about digital transformation in the companies. What about digital transformation at the heart of business schools, at the heart of universities? Because we have to change a lot of things. We have to change, and for me, this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about skills and how to accompany students. Corinne and Leila were sharing that in their answers. Having new students now, it's just something that has to make us very humble, because the way we worked with students 5 years ago and now is so different. The needs, the perspective from the students are so different. So the idea is just say, what do the students now that are, and particularly at the undergrad, that are 17, 18, 19, what are the real expectations? How do they want to interact with faculty? How Corinne was saying about the office hours. We still have office hours, but what is the future of office hours? What does it mean? Now we don't need any more in the office. So it's the mortar is dead. The bricks are dead. We don't need the office itself as a space. We need more availability from the faculty and more added value to better listen to the needs and to be more learner-centric. And I think that we have to work on the transformation of our own organization to make it a really agile organization, more serving all the stakeholders and the different type of learners we have. And to do that, it means that we have to change our perspectives ourselves. We need not to practice our job today as we have done for a long time. And maybe I want to say, in the new normal, as we say, it will be a new normal, and it's not the past normal. And we have to totally forget the old world and to be a part of those who design the new normal, because we are an educational institution. And I think we really need, when I say that in our school on June 2020, we decided that our future is blended. It means that we had to change a lot of things, and we are still working on it. But it's a long way. It's not a switch off that we can have in a couple of months. It's a long way, because we have to accompany the faculty, we have to train people, we have to test, learn, and we have something that we use at Eskas with just 3 words. We say test, learn, and improve. And we have always to test, learn, and improve, and we can fail. And if we fail, it's not a problem. We can talk about it, then improve.
I think that's from my perspective, very inspiring. I think, yeah, I think it's not a short journey, but I think it's a necessary journey. It sounds like to me.
Let me add something that I think my 2 colleagues can agree with me on that. We have to move from a kind of education that was in a way a little bit massive education, even if our schools are more human-sized. Because when I say massive education, it means that we have a class of 30, 40 students, and they're gonna stay together for a long time, have courses together and things like that. I think this kind of education is the past one, is definitely something that we have to leave, we have to abandon, and we have to create a new kind of way to accompany students. We have to be more, we have to bring a kind of individualization, because in the blended learning, we don't need to have the whole group having the whole credits, having all the courses together. Maybe one of the students that do not need that skill or already has it. So this student, we have to give him the opportunity to use her or his time to acquire something else. Maybe that has nothing to do with soft skills and business and management or finance or marketing, maybe in music, maybe in sport, and help her or help him define and build and strengthen the profile of the person and the leader, the future leader Corinne was talking about. So I think we have to accelerate the way that we give opportunity to students to, we always talk about the bento box for Asian lunch, and we have in this bento box, we have everything. I think all that we have to help students design and decide what they want to have in their personal bento box. And two students that started in the school in the same program, the same year, the same month, same day, will have two different bento boxes. And this is the way they can progress individually, but they can bring some diversity, some new insights, and bring knowledge to each other and make this diversity something very, very, very strong in the classroom. Thank you.
So I'm interested to quickly jump to Corinne on that before we go to Dr. Chiki, just because of your perspective is obviously from a bachelor's side. So I'm interested to hear how you feel that kind of argument translates to a bachelor's side, where you were describing students are a little bit more of a blank canvas in terms of the skills that they have already. Do you think that applies also in bachelor's education, or not so much, or what are your views on that?
Yeah, I was reflecting while you were speaking, Tammy, because I agree we need more customization, but at the same time, students don't know what they need to know. So we are here to provide a program that is as comprehensive as possible. Obviously, we can't teach them all. There is to learn, because that's an infinite job. So we make a stance on what we want them to learn. And it's probably, finding the right balance of what are the key skills. They don't like financial accounting, most of them. Well, too bad, they still have to learn it, right? And so then what we need to work on is what's the most efficient way in terms of pedagogy to have them acquire those skills. And what is interesting, actually, but it's very recent in the French higher education system, is that the ministry is now asking us for the accreditation, the visa, etc., to present our programs in terms of acquisition of competence, and not so much acquisition of credits and knowledge, which is a completely different mindset. And that's not how we've been building our programs, because obviously the framework given by the ministries, the states, and each country has a strong influence on how we present our programs, obviously. And now they're forcing us to think differently on how we want to present. And then it's not just about presenting, we actually need to deliver. And if we want to assess competence and not so much knowledge acquisition, then it's a whole different story. So that's a very interesting exercise that we are working on. And I think in that framework, the personalization part and individualization has, is fantastic, because then we can have many ways of reaching the same skill, and students could, feel very differently. It could be through academic learning, it could be through experiences. We can feed it with very different kind of experiences. So it's work in progress, I would say. And then, in the bachelor's program, I mean, the one I work for, it's very, if I put it in a very caricatural way, it's basically 2 years of foundations, and they all learn more or less the same thing. And then from the year 3 and 3 onwards, they customize their program with their electives. So nothing, it's not a revolution here. It's very basic. Probably the opposite of what happens in the US somehow, because we start with general education, and then we specialize, well, and humanities come later anyway. So it's already in there. We already have that personalization thing, but we do keep the hand somehow on what we want them to learn.
Great, thank you. Very interesting context there. So we've got a question, so we're approaching time. So, but a question has come in around what technological advancements are likely to become essential for business schools, and how can business schools keep pace with the constant change? So I'd be interested to hear, Dr. Tricky, maybe your response to that around what you feel are likely to be the essential technological advancements, and yeah, how business schools can adapt.
Yes, I think joins a little bit what Tammy said earlier, in the sense where sometimes we forget that business schools are also a business, and they need to adapt their way of doing things. They need to make sure that they upskill also their workforce, because sometimes we do it very well for our executives, but not so much for our internal staff. And actually, for me, the same trends that are hitting other sectors will for sure, impact business schools, either it be digitalization, and like we talked at the beginning of this conversation, how the digital learning is here to stay, and how to really make sure to adapt to that. And one of the biggest impact, at least for us, and challenge is, for professors to upskill in that, because usually professors are, master in what they are doing, and sometimes it's difficult for them to adapt to these new technologies. So if there's one thing we had to choose among all the impacts, I think it's this digital being for all our community. But of course, we will also need to see how we can take advantage of blockchain technology, especially in this micro learning path for the corporates, etc., or how artificial intelligence could make us do better what we're doing, and how to make a better use of big data and all the data we have on our customers, either it be companies or upcoming students. All those business schools, I think, really need to adapt and know more how to do it, and not just teach it to our learners.
Perfect. Thank you. I just also, I think maybe to conclude, I'd be interested to hear from any of you really around how you feel partnerships might play a role in this. So obviously there are various challenges with us right now. And there are various challenges that we're sure will come in the near future, whether we like it or not. So I'm interested to really get your view on whether you think that business schools will become maybe more open to partnerships, or have a broader variety of partnerships to address these challenges, or whether it will be mainly some challenges that you'll solve yourselves.
Well, I guess on my side, I think it's pretty clear that partnerships are really the key to answer all those challenges. And Leila did mention it before, like the partnerships with engineering schools are, it's like so obvious that, we can match the skills on both sides. We used to have in the programs, double degree programs, but usually with business schools. So the objective was more to provide international exposure and exposure to a different educational system, different network to our students. But now we're working more and more on transdisciplinary partnerships because this is really bringing different value to our students. And this is also where we can have some customization, because not all students would be interesting to have that kind of level of specialization, but it really brings a lot into the curricula. And then the other kinds of partnerships, not so much with schools, but with other actors like Coursera or other online course providers. This also brings different opportunities into the curricula, and it's really we just can't work alone anymore. I think that's just clearly not possible, and it's just not possible, but it really adds a lot in terms of value to our programs. Fantastic.
I think that's us at time. So on that theme, I would like to say, yeah, a really big thank you to Coursera's partners here today. So Eskas, MSB and ESSEC, and also to you individually. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If I can just, before we let you go, remind you that the recording will be sent out a week from today. And on behalf of AMBA and BJ, just to thank our panel and Coursera for a great session. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next webinar. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.